Hello and welcome back. I am Matthew Dale and I am here to talk about all things music and all things guitar. Today, I think the topic is going to be big, lush chords. I love these sounds, things that sound like stuff that sounds like that. I love the sound of those chords, but I think they elude a lot of guitar players. How do we think about 9s, 11s, and 13s? How do we get our hand to do those things? I'm going to try to address those topics here in probably a two-part video. Today's going to be mostly about the guitar, how to put these concepts on the guitar, and then in part 2, we're going to dive into some more theory stuff. So, let's get started. There's really two things that you need to know really well in order to construct these big chords. The first of which is smaller chord shapes to relate them to, and then the second being a couple of major scale shapes to put in these other notes that sound cool on these chords. So let's dive into these smaller chord shapes. These are shell chords based off of 7 chords, both a major 7 chord, a minor 7 chord, and a dominant 7 chord. So I'm going to put up a graphic here, and I'm going to have this chart available on my website. You can hit the link below, and that'll take you to the website, and you can download that and have this in front of you whenever you want. So 6 chord shapes, 3 of which are going to start on the low E, 3 of which are going to start on the A string. So let's take a look at the low E on this G, and we'll make a couple of chords. First one is a major 7 chord. And I like to think of these shell chords as almost like a jazzy approach to power chords. You know, power chords are like the one shape that rules them all. You know, whatever. Power chords you can put on any string set and they sound great, and they're really easy to get our hand and our brain around those movable chord shapes. These are kind of the same thing, but on a little more of a complex harmonic sound, being 7 chords, either major 7, dominant 7, or minor 7. So, 3-note chord shapes. The way that I'm voicing these chords would be 1, 7, and then 3. And I've got my root note on the E string, the 7 is on the D string, and then the third of the chord is on the G. And I'm only playing those 3 notes. You can strum it if you do a lot of first finger muting, or you can pluck it, either hybrid, if you are pitching the pick, or you can do, like I've got, thumb or a thumb pick and first and second finger. That sounds really nice and clean. Our basic chord shape, starting with the major 7 chord, is root, 7, and 3. Our chord formulas, derivative of that, would be root, flat 7, 3 for the dominant chord, the 7 chord as we would often see on a chart, and then root, flat 7, and flat 3 for the minor 7 chord. So again, if we can relate everything to this one basic shape, we get all 3 of those shapes, or all 3 of those chords that come out of it. So root, 7, 3. I'm going to drop the 7 down to flat 7, same root, same 3, for the dominant 7 chord, or, as I said before, just 7, G7. G minor 7, flat 3rd. So root, flat 7, flat 3. So those are the 3 first chord shapes. Let's put this up an octave over on the A string. This time the voicing is a little bit different. The 3rd and 7th are flipped. So 1, major 3rd, major 7th, and I'm playing that 9, 10, and 11 on the strings A, D, and G. So this one's a little bit closer. All the strings are adjacent to one another, so that might be kind of nice. So same rules apply. We're going to flat 7, 1, 3, 7, flat 7 for the dominant 7 chord, and then flat the 3 for the minor 7 chord. And it's important to see these as the musical numbers or the scale numbers, because then it sort of gets the guitar out of the way. I know for the sake of teaching this, I'm giving you guys the frets, 10, 9, and 11. But if you can see them more clearly as the scale notes or the chord notes, it's going to help you out in the long run a lot more. So to kind of piggyback on that, if we apply a couple of major scale shapes to our root notes that we have here on the E string and the A string, we can see where these notes come from. So the root is always 1, and if I play, again, I'm going to show the graphic of the major scale shapes. We're going to start with the low E. I'm going to show the graphic, and we're going to play through this. You want to count the scale notes as you go through this. It's going to help you get to know your scales a lot better. So root are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then we go back to 1, another root. We could keep counting. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. And that scale shape is going to end on 2 on the second degree of the scale. As we count through that, we see where those chord tones come out of, our 3rd and 7th. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then back to 1, 2, and 3. So there's where we get those 2 chord tones. Before we get started on building some of these chord shapes, here's a quick tip about our number system and chord building that might give you a little more insight. So if we work our way through the numbers, I mentioned earlier in the video, what do the numbers 9, 11, and 13 mean? Obviously, with our scale of just 7 notes, those can be a little bit confusing, but basically 9 is the same thing as 2, 11 is the same thing as 4, and 13 is the same thing as 6. They're just referring to playing that particular note, either 2, 4, or 6, up an octave. That's a more traditional way of looking at it, but in terms of putting it on the guitar, it means the same thing. We can kind of put those anywhere. So here's what I mean by that. Let's take a look at a couple chords. So I'm going to start with the major 7 chord here. And let's say I want to add a 13 to major 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. You can just count up through the scale 13 notes. And now I have a major 13 chord. What if I want to play that 13 down an octave where it would be 6? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now that's more of a 6 chord sound. The biggest difference there is that I'm not including the major 7 in the 6 chord. So whenever you get a higher number, 9, 11, and 13, that's assuming that 7 is going to be in that chord, whether that be on a dominant chord or a minor 7 chord or a major 7 chord. Hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. Let's go on to making some other chords, and maybe it'll make some more sense that way. How about a dominant 7, 13? So dominant 7 chord, and now I'm going to play 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So there's that 13th note. That note didn't change, and I moved my chord shape around to make it a dominant 7, 13. Also just G13. If we see this on a chart, it's going to be G13. I really like that chord. Let's take a look at a couple of cool voicings on a minor 7 from this shape. So there's our basic minor 7 chord shape. 1, flat 7, flat 3. And I like to put the 11th in this every now and then as well. So if I, again, count through our scale shape, I don't need to change this. For the purpose of making chords, I don't need to change this from a major scale to a minor scale. The major scale still works. And in fact, all of the numbers within chord diagrams are going to be referencing the major scale. So if you ever see something like a dominant 7 flat 13, that's going to be flat 13 from the major scale. We'll get to that chord in a bit. Let's go back to minor and let's find the 11th. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So 11 is the C note. I really can't voice the minor 7 fully in this because the 11th here, the 4th, is on the G string, and we know that the flat 3rd is also on the G string. But I can move this C over here, and I can play that chord that way. Let's go to that dominant 7 flat 13. Again, I'm thinking major scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Now I'm going to flat 13. And as I said before, it's a dominant 7 chord. So dominant 7, there's my little dominant 7 shell chord. And I'm adding flat 13. That's a cool sound. I like that one a lot. Now, let's take a look at moving our root up to the A string. We get a few more possibilities when we move things up here. So let's again start with major 7, and let's play through this scale shape so we know where all of our notes are. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and back down. So now, same thing. We're going to take our basic chord shapes, and now let's add a 9 to this major 7 chord shape. I'm just going to count up 9 scale notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Apply my chord shape back down, and we get one of my favorite chords, a major 9 chord. Major 7 with a 9. Let's do a dominant chord now. Let's do, how about dominant 7 with 9? 9 doesn't change. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. But now I'm going to change it to a dominant 7 with a 9, which is kind of your classic blues or classic funk chord. How about 9 with a 5th on top? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I could call this 8, or I could go back to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So now that note's 5. And that's kind of the 9 chord shape that everyone kind of gets to know right off the bat if you play any funk or blues. That's kind of how we can look at constructing that chord shape, that voicing. Now I added this note up here, a whole step from 5. Let's find out what that is. Again, I'm going to go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Back to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I could think of this as adding 6, or because 6 is 13, this could be a dominant 7 with 9 and 13 in there. I like that chord a lot too. Sounds great when you resolve it down to the 5th, or it just sounds great on its own. Here's another one of my favorite chords. It's a minor 9 chord. So let's find 9 again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 from the major scale. And then putting the minor 7 shell chord shape down. And then we get minor 9. Love that sound. How about minor 9 and 11? Let's find 11. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And then a little bit of finger gymnastics. It's kind of a weird bar chord shape. So you have to bar for both the minor 3rd and the 11th. And that can be kind of a cool chord. Minor 9 for sure, though. How about minor 9 with 13? Again, it's 13 from the major scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. And that's a really interesting chord sound. Before we move on to part 2, don't be afraid to get a little bit experimental about this. Play a chord shape and try to see what happens when you put different things in place, like major 7, maybe major 7 with an 11. That sounds kind of weird. I don't like that, and you can remember that, and I didn't like that one. Maybe major 7 sharp 11. That's also a little bit weird, but it sounds a little bit cooler. Major 7 and 13. Major 7 with 9 and 13. That sounds nice. Major 9 up here. Minor 9. You know. How about dominant 7 with a flat 13? So I'll do this from here. Dominant 7. Flat 13. And that's with a 9. That's kind of interesting. Dominant 7 flat 9. Which would be like this. Sharp 9. We all know that one. The dominant 7 sharp 9, also known as the Hendrix chord. So you can be a little more experimental with the stuff just in the practice room before we really dive into the heavy theory and get to know where we would put them in certain chords, certain keys. Stick around for part 2 where we go into that theory stuff. And if you like this video and you found it pretty helpful for expanding your chord vocabulary, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and smash that like button and do all those things. We'll see you on the next one.